Starting off on Hecate for this fresh best of 3. In the top right, it is Liquid Clem. Bottom left, we have Shopify Rebellion's Byun. I actually do favor Clem here. Both of them are playing with a decent amount of ping. Clem's time zone is theoretically worse, but he plays in this almost every week, so I think he's shifted his sleep schedule to accommodate playing in North America, so I don't know when he sleeps, I guess. I don't want to do the math, actually. He sleeps at a weird time, all right, because he's clearly doing this all the time. And I would say for the Koreans, you know, it's absolutely not an unreasonable time to get up and start doing your job, I suppose, but what they usually have issue with is that they aren't doing a lot of events in the morning in their time. So it's not that the time is unreasonable. It starts at like 10 a.m. or 12 p.m. or something. But rather that they actually are usually doing a lot of other events that have them sleep in even longer than that. So like it's not necessarily ideal for either region, I suppose, be playing in North America, Korea, or Europe. Theoretically, Korea kind of works with like your natural human circadian rhythm, whatever, a little bit better. But both of these guys play in the North American Cup really frequently, even after such a grueling tournament like the regionals, which Clem was playing just yesterday. He also did play in the European Open Cup earlier today, so he just grinds, man. Grinds. But we know that Byun does as well, even though he wasn't playing his regional because GSL finished like a month ago. We know that he plays in almost every single online tournament. So they both are very well versed on this particular format, but then who's actually better in TvT is the question, and it feels like Clem has really ascended. He now, no, I mean, first it was his worst matchup straight up a couple of years ago, and then it was a matchup that was meh, and then it was, oh my god, he can never beat a Korean Terran, and then it was, I guess he could take a couple of games, and well, now he beat Maru, all right? That was kind of the ultimate test, and now he has his PhD in TvT, you know? He did the essay, did like the thesis defense or whatever it is, like he's good, he's got it. And so I actually favor him in TvT, but it is a clash of aggressive Terrans that I think can easily lead to flip-flops between them series-wise, where it's just, you know, both of them can be very aggressive, so then it's whoever gains that momentum on a particular day actually wins. I would say Byun has been maybe a little more prone to pushing that aggression, still very much the person I think of first and foremost when I think of an 8-racks pusher. He's a truck pusher. He's an 8-racks pusher. And that he doesn't opt for the 3-star port on 4cc. Whereas Clem, even though we know him for his aggression and his micro and his mid-game, because we think a lot of his TDZ, he actually has worked a lot on striking when the iron is hot, yes, but then also being able to play that slower game, which I still don't think is his favorite to play. But he absolutely can play it. Whereas Byun actually, I think, falters more when he is forced to play the defensive game. Not that he can't, but it's not his favorite even more than it's not Clem's favorite. That's a sentence in English I think made sense. Clem's better in that uncomfortable state than Byun, I guess. This is a better way to put it. Clem did open with the 2-racks, but decided not to actually use it for that much aggression. I guess not liking that he was facing someone going for, I mean, a factory expand usually what he'd be up against, but whatever it was, he didn't go for anything with it. What he is doing is turning the 2-1-1 into a solid production, slightly defensive setup now with a faster medevac and generally faster stim as well. He should actually be using that for stim. There's a chance, however, that he moves it off onto the starport. There's a chance. But right now, he is under some aggression because Byun opted for a medevac and 2 cyclones. The cyclones popped out of the reactor. And it's annoying, but it doesn't usually do catastrophic damage. Unfortunately, mobility is the greatest thing for them. And they do kill SCVs rather well now. And they were okay at it before, but a little bit of return damage from the Reapers. I mean, they actually almost got 5 SCVs. They might still. The 6th one is in the natural, looking so juicy to actually grab. That's 6 right there. So it could have been 7, actually. Could have matched the damage that Byun just did to his opponents. Instead, it was 1 less. However, that seems to be totally A-okay, no problem, because Clem actually remains slightly ahead on the SCV count by basically half an SCV, I suppose. But considering that could have been straight up 7 SCVs lost and no return damage, really, you don't expect the Reapers to do that. That is great for Clem. It was keeping his economy farther ahead than Byun's, again, by the tiniest little bit, but then also keeping his army rather intact. Now that is 7 Cyclones going on 8 for Byun, who's doing the Cyclone memes. Is that good? I don't know. It's looking okay, I guess. A lot because Clem's Cyclone probably lasted a lot longer than it should have, though, I think is the main problem right there. I thought that thing was going to go down instantly, but Byun's Cyclones had to target so many fodder units, shall we say. The Marines gave their lives for the greater good, and Clem getting a second Cyclone, a Viking that could have landed or just pushed off the Raven and Medevac, and a tank shortly popping, you know, at the end of that battle. It looks like Clem was probably going to live, but again, imagine a scenario where Byun gets all the lock-ons and divides the army like he did for even a little bit longer. This whole army gets wiped out. This army comes down the ramp into the microbility of, let's say, 4 Cyclones and a Medevac. That's when things actually really look quite scary, because we know the Cyclones can maximize their damage in limited unit scenarios really well. So even though that looked a bit like a fizzle, I was like, okay, it wasn't that great. There is, I think, actually a finer line than we're thinking of where that could have been a disaster for Clem. The good news for Clem is that it wasn't. So Stim was faster. He did start that in the midst of all the running around trying to take care of those Cyclones. Third CC not on location and straight up slower than Byun's, however, puts Byun back in the lead for the economy, maybe temporarily. 2 Medevacs with stimmed Marines and 2 tanks heading right into the main base. Clem now using his mobility to try and take on Byun, who is still really on this Cyclone composition. Thankfully, also with some Ravens, take out the tanks from the equation. However, one of them might be unsieged or unmatrix, sorry. Nah, the auto turret did a wonderful job taking that out. In fact, that auto turret, shout out to that one. That tank gets a shot. These Cyclones are already at half health. And the leftover Marines could have maybe started to try and snipe a couple of them, but auto turret did the job. The interference matrix did the job mostly, and so thank God for the Raven. Still, however, I would say that Byun's composition is getting worse. 3 Cyclones, they shouldn't find another moment to really be highlighted, basically. They got their little drop, they got their little push, they got their little defense, and now they should really just go ahead and die. Just kill yourself. Not a big fan of Cyclones. Anyway, we got Marines actually on the front line now as Clem realizes there's an opportunity to overwhelm his opponent. Once again, interference matrix helping Byun out tremendously, but these are now combat shield Marines as well for Clem, so they're just feistier than their counterparts. The Cyclones are still getting a chance to shine, as they do get a couple of lock-ons onto Clem's reinforcing tank, and I swear to God, these guys have to go ahead and die. You cannot be the MVP of this freaking game. 7, 8, again, Cyclones made in total. And they've done stuff for 8 minutes. I mean, I don't want to give them credit, but here, I guess I have to. Until that Clem is in a little bit more of the feistier position. He does still have more medevacs to fly around and consistently apply this pressure, but Byun is certainly doing a good job of making sure nothing snowballs. Nothing kills a bunch of SCVs or forces his third to lift or then kills all of his Ravens so that the follow-up push can do even more damage. He's actually doing a great job retaining units. He's got faster upgrades. He had that third CC on location faster and actually got it to mining at a decent time. And Byun has set himself up well for the mid-game. Clem's relentless aggression not finding the success that he was hoping for, but not exactly failing either. 4th CC now for Clem. Byun should be starting his relatively soon, actually. He's got significant minerals, so he actually really should. Part of that is because he's also supply block, so a little bit of a macro mistake coming in for Byun. Whoopsie-daisy. Clem not making a similar mistake. He's actually spending all of his money. I mean, Byun could be a little more cognizant of his macro right now, and basically there's a point in which you are supply blocked enough that you just admit that you should just throw down a command center, basically. I think that's a Terran thing, obviously more than the other races because we can put our command centers anywhere, but it's just like, F it, like I'm supply blocked too long, command center. I feel like that was actually a rare moment where a pro gamer could have done that too, and I would not have judged them too harshly. But anyway, He instead slaps down even more supply depots, a factory, and then his command center, finally using most of his money. At the end of the day, he once again deflects Clem's aggression for the most part, loses 6 SCVs, but now it is time for Byun to finally get on the other side of the map. Upgrades equal, but we got a concave here for Clem, and almost surround as well as the SCVs get pulled in, and that was not what Byun was hoping for at all. Now, it did seem that he recognized it wouldn't be very good for him, so he pulled back as soon as he could with his Marines and medevacs, but you know, the tanks being forfeit still the biggest pain, the biggest loss, and in fact the Marines are all going to die as well. Now Clem, certainly bolstered by that defense, is going to immediately engage in the counterattack, of which he was probably already planning on getting back on the horse, back on the front lines, but now it's just the perfect green light to do so. He is going to be hit with anti-timing soon, I suppose. Clem's 2-2 is like 30 seconds away, but still even upgrades. Tanks do get sieged up, and Clem's upgrade, or his medevac count, with the amount of Marines that he has, is going to go ahead and work out before Byun's upgrades even finish. Now Byun, he does have 26 Marines somewhere, but I guess they were holed up in the main, maybe fearing a drop or maybe dealing with a drop. I don't know, because some of them are stimmed and injured. But they were not on the front lines when they needed to be, and it might be too late now as more reinforcements for Clem come down the middle of the map. Tanks still sieged up as well, more sieging up, and SCVs have to be pulled. Byun not even going to make this hold, actually. I was going to do the typical at what cost thing, but he's not even going to make this hold happen. He is just going to die. At half the army supply and down 20 workers with his 4th CC still not on location. Clem's already planetary, building a 5th, in fact. This is not a game that Byun actually ends up winning. Even if he had an upgrade lead for another 60 seconds, it would not be enough. Byun not one to admit that super quickly, though. There we go, GG. Nothing to be done there. And he finally does tap out. Clem, I mean, I don't want to say he's looking necessarily like this. I want to say he looks like the stronger Terran, but I want to put more detail on that, and that's what I'm kind of struggling with, to really highlight the exact things that Clem is stronger with is like... It's kind of difficult because Byun wasn't playing a poor game. And Byun did do his own good job defending. And he got to a position in which I think many Terrans would start to mount a comeback and take over the momentum. But I guess what it was that Clem looked stronger overall, because even though he had a lot of aggression that wasn't necessarily succeeding, again, it wasn't necessarily failing either, it was kind of middle of the road, he still ended up having the better reads on situations. And I guess that's why I'm thinking he just like overall looked like the stronger player, even though it was really one moment in particular that really did Byun in when he engaged on Clem's side of the map and Clem won the battle as he did. That was the decider. But it was like, I think the fact that Clem still got to that point despite a lot of what looked to be not like super great things happening for him. I don't know. It just... It's one of those situations in which I expect Clem to be a little too overly aggressive, lose too many units, and then he does get counterattacked like Byun did, and then Clem would lose. This is why I'm a little lost for words, because Clem made that counterattack look like nothing. So when that happens, when I start to think, well, there's an opportunity for this guy, and then the other guy just makes it look like there was never an opportunity to begin with, I guess that's what makes me believe that they're a stronger player in that matchup. In the bottom right it is Clem, top left it is Byun. It's kind of what Maru would do a lot of the time. Not only was he a great turtler and defender, but he also had those moments in which we were pretty sure that he was going to be vulnerable, and then instead of looking vulnerable, he even turns it around on his opponent and ends up winning the TvT battle, and we're just like, okay, well, Maru's freaking magic. That's what Clem's displaying a little of lately in TvT. Well, the 2 racks opener from Clem is interesting. Since he didn't use it aggressively last game, that's why I'm saying it's interesting. Now, it could be that he's opting for this because it can be used defensively, but then it also could be used offensively. You can really kind of choose here. But then also because he is more interested in the follow-up. Now, that would be interesting, again, using the word too much, but because I just gone over in the first couple of minutes that I kind of think of Byun as more the aggressor. I kind of think of Byun as more likely to do the 2 racks opener into the 2-1-1, or proxy 2 racks, of course, but the 2 barracks at home and the 2-1-1. It does seem to be becoming more popular, I think, maybe because of the patch, because of the maps, both, whatever it is. But it seems that this and medevac drops now hold a place in the early game of this matchup more so than they did before the patch. We have a couple of Cyclone shenanigans, which, you know, I'm not a fan of. And we still have old Dependable on the Ravens and the Interference Matrix. But medevac drops, 2 racks into kind of faster 2-1-1 seems to be more prevalent. It's always been a thing, and it wasn't the most popular thing. I thought that was the way of things, and then actually during the regionals, we saw a TvT in which it was just very basic TvT as far as that, you know, just into the Ravens Interference Matrix, so I was wondering if I was wrong, but perhaps it was specifically those 2 players, so I don't remember. I don't remember who it was. Anyway. But no, yeah, so they're doing a little more of what I was thinking, what the matchup's been developing into. More focused 2-1-1s, actually a 3rd CC, so Clem is being kind of greedy here. And then for Byun, I guess he is so far doing the typical thing, but if that's a medevac, yeah, it's the medevac drop opener. Oscar Jesus Mike, thank you for the 2 months. So, the 2-1-1, the emphasis on your barracks production over your factory and starport production is already kind of a greedy is not necessarily the right word, but it's a way of almost kind of skipping a step in TvT that is still considered the most important step, which is that tech-heavy first 5 or 6 minutes. So we saw a lot of the straight and narrow TvTer who did just go for tanks and ravens in the old patch against the guy who did the 2-1-1, and then the guy with the 2-1-1 would just be forced to base trade to gamble to win out against the push. So the fact that he's adding on a 3rd CC, I mean, it's obviously a fast 3rd CC, so I don't have to really explain too much on why I'm saying this is greedy, but then I think it's even greedier because he's not protecting it with some high-tech units, some high-value units like the tanks or the ravens. He's got a couple of cyclones, which can be key units if microed correctly, but not necessarily in a position where the tank is already sieged up on that natural. Clem's bunker will hold on for a little bit. Something. Doesn't even get salvaged, though. And this is still a dangerous scenario in which a concave is paramount. Clem is going to just simply have enough units by the looks of things, not get the lock on the medevac or the tank. And Byun is going to skedaddle. For Clem, that actually was pretty easy. That is not the pressure that I think is really going to be painful. I think the follow-up pressure is going to be potentially painful for the composition that he has chosen. And Byun, I mean, he might be doing it because of all the things I'm talking about. He actually, one, seems to like these pushes on site delta because there's a ramp in the natural. He did it versus Protoss earlier. But then, two, he might be thinking if he's going to do the 2 racks again, then he's going to be very limited on the amount that he can control space and control siege units. So I'm going to siege him up. And I'm going to get those space-controlling Vikings, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And he might be right about that still. Comes back in with the first tank, second tank now reinforcing, and this is what I was more so scared of. Clem still does not have very good units. The Cyclones hardly counting. The Marines without combat shields definitely not counting. And everything combined together running down the ramp, you know, is less than an ideal scenario. So let's see if Clem can hold on. Vikings have landed, which I think is the wise move here, as now everything gets pulled forward as the tank arrives. Focus fires on the army of the opponent, but there's a lot of SCVs sacrificed to hold on here. In fact, too many, I think. 15, 18 SCVs going down, and just barely holding on as well. Didn't even, I would say, entirely and completely clean that up so that a counterattack could be fearsome, right? Sometimes that's what you do. You know you're going to take a hit to your SCVs, but then it overwhelms that tank army, and then you can get a little bit of a counterattack going, but that's not even the case here. We're still just down 13 workers, a little down on the army supplies. Stim is not yet done, which means combat shield's certainly not done, and the one medevac we have doesn't have a lot of counterattack potential. Clem, if he was able to play his game from here on out, just la-di-da, I have 3 CC, and then I'm going to fly around the base and the map, and it's going to be awesome, then I think he has a lot of comeback potential. But Byun is not quite letting him go. I mean, it's a dangerous game that Byun's now playing, though, to be honest, because this is a very limited amount of units. This is a comically low amount of units. Byun's Vikings in the earlier engagement were really very important because they were the anti-SCV pull. They were the slaughtering of the SCVs if that happened. Without them, I don't think the 18 SCVs die. It's like 9 SCVs. 6 SCVs did still go down in that attempted hold because, yeah, Clem still was not quite ready to defend. But it was a cleaner, faster defense, and Byun did just lose a couple of those slow-building tech units that he was so favorable on, primarily the tanks, still winning out in the Viking War because Clem doesn't really want to play the Viking War. So Clem, he has bridged the SCV gap a little, despite those further losses, down by 7 now. He's got faster upgrades, faster sim combat shields, faster medevacs, and of course the mobility to play around with, which that's his comeback. His third CC is only going to be marginally faster than his opponent's, with its orbital already done, and both of them transferring it over now. 8 Marines and an injured medevac heading into the main base, but Byun knows the plan. He knows what he was looking at in that natural and knows that Clem's going to try and harass him to death. 2 missile turrets might still not be enough. Actually, that was enough. I love the cheeky little Liberator that the Marines were hoping to fall back into. Oh, wait, no, that was... Actually, it confused me. That was Byun's Liberator. Byun's Liberator was going to try and help out if the Marines did fall back, I guess is the better way to put it, but that was easy peasy cleanup. I think Clem was hoping that that would either, of course, do more damage or would last a little bit longer so that this attack up the front would have a little more bite to it. As it is right now, I think Byun's defense on his third is going to be good enough. 3 tanks in position-ish, but also 6 Vikings going to gun down any medevacs that Clem has been building up. And there you go. And that Liberator did to go across the map to kill 3 SCVs. Clem still trying to catch up on that worker count. And we'll just about get there. Saturation, all of his minerals at the very least. Double Liberator harassment, my bad. I was surprised. Clem was surprised. 7 SCVs, 8, not quite. Let's kill the Marine instead. But 7 SCVs go down, and Clem still falls behind by 9. Again, he might fully saturate his minerals very soon, but actually you do need your 6 gas. This is Terran, so... It's just straight up too few SCVs. Byun should be in a prime position to win this game, but then it is a 3-base Terran setup, and a lot can be done on that. Clem could leave his tanks at home, as he is doing as we see, and then hopefully defend any push from Byun, and then use his Marines to try and capitalize on any mistakes that Byun does make. But Byun is very familiar with this process because I feel like he's the one that does it a lot. So he clearly saw that he was familiar with the follow-up. He did prepare for it, and he should be prepared for any other follow-up, but sometimes you're just a little unlucky. Okay, Byun was paying attention. 4th CC, much faster for Byun, but Clem did afford it. His 2-2 finally starts up, and not really all that much farther behind. You know, it should have been faster, but loss of SCVs hit him. So at least it's not that far behind. He's going to skimp on his vehicle weapon upgrades, which is kind of understandable, but yeah, he definitely should still get them. And these medevacs this time around are going to be
Mineral field
allowed
completed.
access to the south side of the map. Clem has a cheeky Marine here, which is going to be perfect, as otherwise he has not a whole lot of defense in the main. Missile turret's coming down now, and a tank is siege. That's something, but not necessarily enough against 16 Marines. Sense towers for both players, kind of covering the main access point, I guess, but... Oh, Clem's Marine's going to get found out here. Byun realizing that's just the drop, pounces on top of it. Clem is going to be forced to flee, so no kind of backstab potential if Byun were moving out, which he's not. He is still only going for the Marine move outs. Now his tank's on siege. Okay, so he is moving out. The Marine drop in the main base was scouted thanks to that Marine, so the response is swift, and in fact, not a whole lot is going to go down here, but I think Clem realizes that he's going to need something on the front lines. It is most likely that Byun is moving out, but then I also love this Widow Mine in the grass as a scouter. That's fantastic, but it also did splash a couple of the Marines. So Byun is not going to find free access into the 3rd base, but he does still have a good army to get a contain setup. Clem's going to have a tough time breaking out, especially as his upgrades will not be equal for another 20 seconds. He also might lose supply depot here. It's a little awkward. But he did finally clean that up totally and entirely. Also, because it is an attack on the 3rd base, Clem's 4th is allowed to get slapped down and maybe turn into a planetary. That's actually something that Byun would be guaranteed to stop, actually, if he just moved over, I think. guarantee is a strong word, but he would have had a chance to stop this from happening. Now, with double sensor tower and the planetary almost intact, obviously getting the siege tanks over there is the longest process, and I don't think they'll get over there, especially because they're losing the particular tank war that we're witnessing. Not supposed to happen when you have the Viking victory. And Clem is clawing his way back into this game. Byun's fourth, of course, also slapped down. Clem can't do anything about that with the Marine-only drop that he has going across the map, but he could try and enter into the third after. Byun is maxed out, and it looks like he might be rallying this army, which can be the big fatal mistake. Oh, but speaking of fatal, we actually have Byun pull the trigger. He jumps on top of the two tanks of his opponents, but I don't think he actually has enough after that. Not quite anyway, almost winning that south side hard enough to enter into the SEV line, but not quite. And now it's Byun's third SEV line that's actually in trouble. The third CC, in fact, is in a bit of trouble, but now we got to go for the SEV. The Master Para came in. The medevacs do fly into the main base where the missile turrets are not quite covering the access point here. And Byun is losing a little bit of his grip on the game, but still overall winning, actually, as he did take such an economic lead from the get-go. Look at all that red right there. He's able to replace so much easier. Clem is counting pennies right now, and he just flew over a fourth base planetary. I think he scanned this one, hoping, praying that was the fourth base. No, it's definitely the fifth. On location, too, and nothing from Clem sent over there to stop that from happening. Byun now going to readjust. Again, double center tower means that Clem can see this happening, but this is going to be a very, very tight game for Clem. Byun having a little bit more of that freedom, especially as his fifth base does get up and running. Nothing stopped that. Clem's just hoping that Byun will get a little impatient and overeager. There we go. Now winning out the air with a tank war. Actually, no, he didn't. That was still a trade. He's like, you're supposed to be winning. A good scan from Clem, of course. And now a freebie tank, kind of, there for Clem. Byun left that one behind. Maybe a mistake, but... Uh-oh, Clem's army not close enough to protect his third. He realized the mistake, so that's why he had to move forward. But unfortunately, that means his tanks are not going to be sieged. Also, the upgrades in favor of Byun, well, in 7 seconds anyway, wasn't necessary. Byun just had more units. GG's. Thank you for the 200 bits, Oscar Jesus Mike. So now all things even in this best of three. Bottom left of Solaris is going to be Clem. On the top right, we do have Byun. Clem forced to defend against, I think, a build that really was supposed to hurt the type of game that he was playing. It's not impossible to come out of that victorious, but I do think it is unlikely. I think what you would have to do is get your Cyclone on top of the very first push a little bit faster, and then the second, so the first push, I mean the first tank, the one that didn't actually do a whole lot, where I was like, this isn't actually the important one, it's the follow-up that's the important one. Because the Cyclone on top of that particular push a bit faster means the medevac might get injured, the tank might get injured, they might actually take some extra time to repair it, or they might just re-engage with injured units. And then that type of damage can really add up. The medevac actually dying, huge. The tank getting one shot by your own tank, your only tank, instead of two shot, huge. And so you just want to add in those steps earlier on, as early as possible. Because that's what you want to do in general against any type of siege-based push. Primarily Terrans doing siege-based pushes, of course, but any siege-based push, the faster that you can get on top of it, the better you usually are. But then there's the question of, can you actually get on top of it? Just because it seems better to engage preemptively doesn't mean that 4 Marines magically beat 5 Marines in a tank. It's like, but I did it faster. Well, you didn't have enough units. So that's usually the difficult thing to determine in TvT. And for Clem, I think he couldn't really have determined a better breaking point than what he did when he broke out the first time and lost the 18 or so SCVs. It's hard to say that he could have done that particular point any better. You could make an argument that he could have gotten a medevac instead of a Viking, or landed the Viking behind. I mean, there probably is a way he could have done that better, I guess, if you really analyze it. But what I'm saying is that it's very difficult. The way the map is designed kind of adds to the abuse. That's why Byun does it in TvT and TvP. And then the read/luck-ish that Byun was looking at Clem once again doing a 2-racks opener. And this time with the third CC. Yeah, I mean, that does set you up for success even more so. Because without that third CC, Clem might have had a couple of more starport units. Basically, I think that's what it would have led to, is more starport units, fast starport units. And then that obviously would have helped, but even without the third CC, it's just it's a difficult thing to ask, to take your very light quantity style of play and win out against the quality style of play, because you don't have the quantity you need. You don't have the Marine numbers that you need. So I think Clem kind of got deservedly punished for the build that he chose, the 2 racks and the third CC coming in quickly. I think he actually might be, from here on out, deterred from doing that particular build on that particular map. Maybe only against Byun, who seems more likely than other Terrans to do that type of tank push, but yeah, it could be overall as well. This time around, very different opener from Clem. It's actually a very familiar opener from Byun. I believe this is what he did in the first game, or close to it anyway. No, I think it's exactly what he did. He eventually got into the reactor cyclones, I suppose. So 2 cyclone medevac drop, and then more cyclones, and then more cyclones. Like I said in the first game, even though it kind of fizzled... Oh, okay, Clem's doing the same thing. Great, awesome. I love Cyclone Wars. So great. It's amazing. I think that there's actually a very high risk, like it's on a knife's edge of whether or not that snowballs or fizzles. And in the first game, it fizzled. Now we have the classic who sees the medevacs first, and it was them both seeing it at pretty much the same time. Clem going to be using his units purely defensively now. It does make it makes it awkward. There's a chance that Byun catches Clem's units off guard because Clem is so stuck on trying to capture this medevac, which does end up flying away. And there's also a chance that Byun engages thinking that he's got the one-up on Clem, and then, well, he's missing 2 cyclones and a medevac. But it actually kind of settles, and they're both doing almost the exact same thing, so it's just, you know, stop. There's 4 cyclones and a medevac versus 4 cyclones and a medevac, but one of you is defending a little bit faster, reinforcing a little bit faster. And the reinforcements pop at the absolutely perfect time. I mean, you couldn't have asked for any better. Maybe a second sooner. The Raven on the backside as well, the auto turret. Brilliant moves here from Clem, but also, I think a little overly aggressive from Byun. He might not have been expecting that his opponent was doing the exact same thing. He saw 2 cyclones on the north and 2 cyclones on the south, I'm pretty sure. But then maybe he was assuming it wouldn't be 6. And that his superior micro, catching Clem, again, maybe his units are on the left side for longer off guard. But that didn't work out at all, did it? Byun does get slapped a little bit. It is a little bit. Not type of interaction that decides the game then and there. Clem takes a worker lead, worker and a half, but they really were doing almost identical builds. So I keep saying almost identical because I think Clem, well, he lost his medevac, but oh, he opened with a Hellion. That's like the tiniest little difference that happened between these 2 players. So Clem is going to go faster into the third CC, and now they really are starting to get, you know, different. We're seeing who's actually ahead here as Clem gets faster to the third CC, faster to stim, slightly faster engineering base. The only thing he's not faster on is tank production. His factory is still being used to swap around. So that's the only thing he's behind on. He's even got 1 more Raven than his opponent. 8 Cyclones to 8 Cyclones, but the double Raven auto turret, I think, is what really helped out Clem here. However, he does sacrifice his Ravens. And I would certainly say you want a Raven coming into the 7, 8, 9 minute mark in TvT more than you want the Cyclones, but not if the Cyclones just win the game. 1 tank will deter that from happening. And Clem will have map control for quite some time, I would say, actually, because we're assuming that the next phase of TvT is kind of waiting for stim combat shields and medevacs. You're not going to be really pushing out, then yeah, the 4 Cyclones will have that map control for the entire time, which might even include delaying the third CC. So it still sucks you had to sacrifice the Ravens. I'm still willing to argue that, but having 4 Cyclones to spread around here is certainly not too bad either. And like I was saying, Clem just actually has so many leads, because he's even faster to the 4th and 5th barracks. I think. Slightly faster. It was actually very close. But still, the point is, like, he's faster in almost everything. Third CC comes down now for Byun, as he has fallen behind now 4 workers. He's about 30 seconds behind on those Marine upgrades. As far as stim, combat shield, sorry. He's actually very even on the 1-1, so that's good news. And now does not have a Raven deficit. Raven. It is now Clem, who has a tank deficit. He also does not have medevac. He opted instead for double Liberator harassment. Maybe getting some revenge for... Was it last game? Might have been, actually. I think it was. Yeah, it was. Sometimes this double Liberator harassment times out with a push, though, and that's actually exactly what's going to happen. So it's all well and good if Liberator does damage, but if it distracts, that's, I think, actually really the best thing. But there's so many missile turrets already. In fact, quite fast. Generally, 3cc saturation is kind of when you can have the wiggle room to get static defense if you want it, but that's still pretty fast to have that already done. You can see that Clem opts to really delay any amount of static defense or just get a very limited amount. So he doesn't find any success with the Liberator. Let's see if he finds success on the front lines. Combat shields 5 seconds away from finishing. Also 1-1. Done now for Byun. So I think if Clem was hoping that that would be a timing, it absolutely wasn't. Nonetheless, Byun was a little bit late to reinforcing with his entire army, so he does be forced to pull 10 SCVs. He does lose them. That only puts him behind by 4, so really not too bad. It was the fact that he didn't have combat shields and some of his army was away from the fight was concerning. But then Clem was still moving in to a choke with some tanks siege. So ended up being a bit of a wash. Clem with now a double drop off to the right side, something that Byun looks to predict or just properly defend a fort that's going on location, which also makes sense as it is a bold move. Terrans do this all the time without proper protection, though. Getting a fourth on location. So there could have happened, not this game. And good news, too, because Clem absolutely would have gunned that down. Probably faster than Byun could have canceled it. 2-2 starts up faster for Byun, who is just straight up on top of the upgrades better. And since his 4th AC is on location, it will help to make up for the delay on the command center itself. Clem's command center now moving over. Looks like his drop got caught by a drop, got caught by a drop. I don't know who got caught where, but then there's a drop on the north side as well that's going to enter into the field. 2 tanks, again, siege up for this, but Clem was willing to out-micro it. Kind of works, but Byun was able to reinforce in time, so kind of worked. Planetary on the way now for probably both players, as Byun's command center is seconds away from finishing, already sending his SCVs over to saturate that. Right now, I'd say the biggest difference is, in fact, that 2-2 timing. Keep saying 30 seconds, but that's just the best I can guess here. I do believe it's like a 20-30 second difference that Byun might be able to capitalize on. Now, it's maybe a hard game to read. There hasn't been a super decisive battle in which Byun is able to say 100% I'm behind, 100% I'm ahead. There's been the Cyclone Wars, which get a little weird just because, you know, at the end of the day, those 4 Cyclones that were left over for Clem didn't really end up doing a whole lot. And then otherwise, not too much, you know, so there's no guarantee that Byun is not dwarfed in army supply until he's maxed out. Then, of course, that's fair game. And he is getting maxed out. So he's moving across the map. He will have a 2-2 timing against his opponent. And Clem is totally unprepared for this. That scanned a bit of the reveal, honestly. He does siege up some of his reinforcing tanks, but 2-2 versus 1-1 is a disaster right now, as Clem absolutely dependent on his tanks. Also has so much of his army on the north side, but does come back in, take out the defensive tanks on Byun's 3rd, and once again gunning after the orbital. Not going to work out. However, maybe he could win the actual fight. No, again, 2-2 being, I think, the ultimate problem right there. Yeah, Byun had a couple of tanks involved, but I think his marine numbers were initially lower. It was hard to check, but maybe by a few. And 2-2 would have kicked in and won them the battle, which it absolutely did. So Clem now has his upgrades even, and he actually starts at +3 attack, where Byun has only managed to grab +3 armor. That's absolutely one of those, just like you thought you had enough for both, but you only had enough for one. It was too fast. And that's kind of big. I mean, we do like +3 attack more than armor. But then also, it looks like Clem remembered his armor a little bit faster. They both remember the second upgrade, I guess, around the same time. Clem has also opted for an 8 racks, by the way. Both of them 8 racksing. Both of them really just depending on their massing of Marines. For Byun, on the offensive, gaining some control with that 1 attack, he is looking to be the one leading here, gaining the momentum, opening up the opportunities to actually end the game. But for Clem, it means that he was able to reinforce very quickly because it was mostly Marine-based. So he's back up to max, actually faster than Byun, which I'm not sure exactly why. Byun's supply block, that's why. He's waiting for his command centers to finish. Attacking on the third base of Clem is still a little overall awkward just because the choke does exist. So Byun was faster to moving to the third base, yes, but Clem still had some tanks protecting that almighty choke. And now the Vikings are also gaining the control of the skies, bullying back some of these medevacs, but not killing that tank, which is still going to be a bother. So sieging up on the right side to actually hit the command center and the SCVs is quite obnoxious. Clem doesn't necessarily 100% need the mining right here, as his 5th is down and a planetary, but that is nonetheless a blow to his economy. Byun also on his 5th, not quite a planetary, has the extra orbitals finally finishing. He has finally gotten unsupply blocked as well, and his +3 armor is going to finish faster than Clem's +3 attack. So again, might have a timing. Although this time around, I don't think he's going to find quite the opportunity. In fact, I'm looking around for Byun's true army, and it is mostly back at home because I guess he had to wait so long to get that last 20 supplies. So that's made this a little bit more awkwardly bumpy than I think it was supposed to be. As Clem is going to try to continue attacking Byun's 3rd to get some map control back, but his 3rd's still under fire. It looks like a Liberator popped out, and that's obviously the best answer. I kind of forgot. Fortunately, Clem didn't. He has the Viking control. He can get a Liberator, and especially in these chokes, that's fantastic. That was odd, though. I think the scans came in later than the actual push on the Marines. I'm not sure. And in fact, it's not a Liberator's been taken down as Byun realizes there's an opportunity. And in fact, might be another opportunity. Both of them have that level 3 on opposite upgrades. Who's going to win out? It's the siege tanks of Clem that are helping tremendously on that top side. And Byun actually took on more than he could chew. I think he was looking at the amount of army that he had and the potential concave that it would get, but it didn't actually concave to the strongest of its capabilities. Clem's tanks were firing away from the get-go. At the same time, it looks like Clem finally broke Byun's pseudo-contain. I think Byun had just overstayed his welcome over here to begin with. He wasn't reinforcing that point, and the reinforcements that could have gone over there went to the north and lost that battle. So Byun is just straight up down 30-40 army supply. Both of them finally finishing all of their upgrades. I didn't actually track exactly who had what timing, but I know they were equally upgraded at that particular attack. And now again, they're both equally upgraded, but it's going to be Clem who decides to go into some armor upgrades. He might add on starports now too, if he hasn't already. Oh, they both added on 1, okay. And Byun's in fact adding on 1 as well. But you know, you do want +2 vehicle weapons, as that does change the kill shot dynamic of the tank versus marine battles. But then as far as that +3 tank vehicle weapons goes, it's kind of a, you know, do I need it? It does have the added damage to all the splash as well, so it's no doubt an effective upgrade. It just doesn't kill the kill shot doesn't change. So you do see some Terrans opt for that armor, especially if the game is kind of clearly going to go on for a while, and more and more likely looking to be an air battle, which Clem has already been winning just by the fact that he's had Vikings, but now he might actually straight up try and really win, you know, purposefully have his eyes, his goal on that particular prize. The tanks of Clem are firing on a planetary. They have to be forced to disengage from that. Very obnoxious thing about playing Terran. And the 2 tanks on the backside could probably afford to go up a little bit more. Ooh, abusive spot right there. Abuse. And Clem is also grabbing Liberator range. Also trying to hit that 3rd CC. However, he left his tanks totally exposed. And then the Liberator is pointing the wrong way as well. And Byun is going to take one hell of an engagement. He does still lose 20 SCVs, and it is on his side of the map. So he's not going to be able to capitalize on that as fast as he's hoping, but that was a big mistake from Clem. Didn't realize how fast the Marine ball was approaching, I suppose. All of his tanks, I believe, didn't even get a shot. They were still sieging by the time they died, and now the south side also gets taken down. Clem temporarily broken. He does have some reinforcements already ready to go, though, and that might just be enough, especially because Byun has to stim to get across the map. Many of his army is injured. And Clem was able to use a bigger, not a bigger, but a big bank to actually reinforce. It's just a matter of consolidating. Because Byun knows that he has an opportunity, he just won back-to-back fights. He's looking to capitalize on it. He is gunning for Clem here. Clem desperately needs to consolidate all of his army, get his reinforcements on the front line, get his Marines underneath medevacs, and get his tanks sieged up, and then he can hold. But he has bled out in the last 30 seconds. Byun absolutely knowing that he had an opportunity. And if he was any shyer of a Terran, he might have been a little too hesitant to capitalize. Instead, he does take his own 30 supply lead. And Clem is going to be smacking himself for the way that he handled this particular engagement on Byun's third base. Orbital on the front, although, by the way, is going to go down by the looks of things. That's a lot of Marines. In fact, it absolutely will. And now it's a question of whether or not this is the last domino to fall before Clem just has to tap out of the game. He's still down 30 supply, loses 11 SCVs, double orbital taken down. He is still on 4-base mining, but you can see that's getting oversaturated because his first 2 bases were the OGs, and they are out of minerals. Forced to lift and land an orbital provides a further vulnerability for Byun to abuse. I think Clem is really going to be slapping himself for the attack on the third. That has caused all of these problems. The Planetary is doing a hell of a job trying to hold on, and those Marines are overstimmed. They are getting one shot by the Planetary or the tanks of Clem, but Clem has so many things to worry about. He doesn't know how quickly Byun is reinforcing. It could be a second attack at any moment, headed straight towards all of his orbitals. His third base is natural, even into the main. The orbital, the Planetary, the fourth, not really a main attack point. So that's not necessarily helping him defend the guts, I suppose, the hearts of his industry. But it is instead the orbitals that are not defending it, so that's very, very scary. But Byun actually is not all that much richer than his opponents. He may have been gunning down orbitals, but at the same time, I guess not necessarily having a lot of minerals to mine from himself. Maybe this only just got slapped down, and the mules only just got slapped down, so what was going to be a burst of income for Byun is not happening at all at this point, as Clem was finally able to get everything together and do his own push down the middle. There was no secondary attack to really push the problem. Byun couldn't find enough cash to max out after his lead to actually end the game. And the dominoes have stopped, at least temporarily, for Clem. Now it's Byun's turn to watch this army track him. And he tracks it in turn. If Byun was truly richer and was maxed out so much faster than Clem, then there's 30 army supply somewhere of Marines looking to force a kind of base trade or certainly an evacuation of Clem's army. But it is just both of these armies eyeing each other up here. Very similar supply, similar upgrades. A tank count at 11 for each, but one of them on siege. It does have Clem siege up the tanks, and they will get a couple of shots, but then so much of Byun's army is already on top of everything. And he was right to take that battle. Clem desperately throwing Marines to the sides here, hoping to find some orbitals, and he actually finds one. He's probably more so hoping to find the SCVs on the third, but he finds an orbital instead. Hey, that's also pretty good, but now it's Byun finding Clem's army that had just retreated. It was going to go back onto the map to cause some problems. Now it's going to get completely taken down. Clem trying to lift and save everything that he has, but he has so little. One more orbital is going to fall. A second tank pops out, and maybe that'll help hold his natural base. But Clem has lost all of the map control. He's going to potentially lose this orbital, his almost last mining base at this point as well, as Byun knows that is a particularly weak point. Byun's tank count doubling that of Clem's, by the way. His Viking counts quadrupling, and now just, 7 to 1. 7 timesing. Centupling. Septupling? Anyway, whatever. Clem is in a lot of trouble. Portability, thank you for the 53 months. Clem doesn't really have a plan that works, obviously, here. You know, he doesn't have something up his sleeve that Byun hasn't accounted for. He doesn't have an extra 40 Marines that are flying by on the other side of the map. He doesn't have the Viking control that leads to the superior Liberator control. And looks like he does have somehow one extra command center, but that's about to be taken down. So not the best game here for Clem, as he is forced to evacuate from that Rich Vespian Geyser. The Vikings and Marines combined together will take down the orbital, I do believe. Yes, they will. And all the SCVs with it, as the new command center also gets taken down. I do believe that Clem is donezo in this particular best of 3. I said I thought he was a stronger TvTer, and not today, but I would still have a lot of confidence if they were to rematch. But today, in a best of 3, Byun has played it out better. Clem was winning until that third strike went so poorly for him. His own ambitions hurting him the most, actually, with an attack like that. Because it was pretty clear that he realized the third was a little vulnerable. Scanned ahead, he raced in. And it was vulnerable, but the Marine army was on the backside. So its vulnerability was a bit of a trick. Clem's last army is going to die very soon. Clem's going to get the kind of full vision of what's going on, I think, soon, and then tap out. Now maybe a little hopeful, a little hopium coming in. GG's. GG's. Very close. But unfortunately not going to be good enough for Clem. As he does not even make it to the top 8 today. Oh, no, that was top 8. Okay, sorry. He doesn't even make it to the top 4. Huh. Blah. He does so often make it to the finals that this is one of the faster exits for him, for sure. But no shame in losing against Byun.